Chapter 5 of The Way to Willpower by Henry Hazlitt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. Resolutions Made and Resolutions Kept. The trouble with the average man is not that he neglects to make resolutions. The trouble is that he makes far too many resolutions. Making resolutions is sometimes his principal daily occupation. He is forever forgetting or breaking them, and that is why he has to make them all over again. You, O reader, have probably been through this experience so often that you dislike to be reminded of it. It is probably your consciousness of past events that has tempted you to read this book. Now, there is something to be said for you. You realize your imperfections. You are splendidly dissatisfied with your present habits, your present mode of living, your present station in life. You say to yourself, "This will never do." You see things as they would be if you could get up earlier in the morning, if you could break that absurd habit of setting your alarm clock for 7, getting up, shutting it off, going back to bed with the honest intention of taking just a 5-minute snooze, and not waking up until 7:45. Ridiculous as it is, this habit repeats itself morning after morning. You jump up with a start. You have a wild notion that the alarm clock has played a trick on you. You dress in 6 minutes, shave in 4, bolt your breakfast, make some excited, irritated, unkind remarks to your wife, start for the station or the streetcar like a man in a walking race. Break into a run, curse the line waiting for tickets, and when you are finally aboard your train, which trudges along and loiters around stations as if all eternity were before it, you say to yourself, "This will never do." In that ride on the train to your office, you see things as they might be. You see yourself getting up at 7, dressing at your leisure, eating breakfast in an expansive mood. No friction, no irritation, no squabbles with friend wife, no dreadful fear that you are going to miss your train, or that somebody will look first at you, at the clock, and then at you as you come in the office. In that ride on the train, you have glimpsed perfection. And you make a tremendous resolution. This thing has been going on long enough. It's preposterous. It has got to stop. Tomorrow, I will get up at 7. And what happens? Well, you arrive at the office, and there are a number of things to occupy attention. Your resolution temporarily drops out of mind. Jones, my chief illustrative standby, wanders in and suggests his little game of poker that night. It is conceivable that you are not ashamed to protest, and that you indicate your new desire to keep early hours. Jones assures you it won't be long, just a hand or two. You go. You arrive home at 1:30, having had, in the main, an evening not too stupid, but inwardly grumbling that you got back so late, or that somehow you couldn't have spent 5 hours at Jones's house and still have arrived home 2 hours after you left home. You go to bed. You sleep. The alarm rings. 7 o'clock. You get up, automatically, in a daze, angry and resentful against the alarm that you yourself have set. You shut it off. You turn back toward the bed like a marionette without consciousness of a decision or of any thought whatsoever. You retrace your steps. You are about to get into bed again. A vague recollection of yesterday's resolution, and perhaps also it is the resolution of the day before yesterday, and of the day before that, flits uneasily across your mind. But you are sleepy. Sleep is indispensable. The trouble yesterday was not that you went back to bed, but that you overslept when you got there. Just a 5-minute snooze. You awake. 10 minutes to 8. Impossible. And in the midst of your 5-minute dress and your 3.5-minute shave and your bolted breakfast, you still have a corner of your mind that is reflecting on what an ass you have been, and making a resolution that this must be stopped. And so on, as one day follows another. The example is chosen at random. It is not an extreme example. It is not the most powerful I could have selected. but it suffices to illustrate my point. The trouble is that even in your moments on the train, you never sufficiently convinced yourself that you really wanted to get up and stay up when the alarm rang. At 9 o'clock in the morning, on your way to work, you have been thinking only of one side of the case. And at 7 o'clock the next morning, you have been thinking only of the other side. Understand me, I am not saying that it would be to your advantage to make that resolve on the train. I do not contend that it would be better to get up at 7 and take your time than to get up at 7:45 and hurry. You are the judge of that. I disclaim any moral attitude whatever. But I insist that if you do make a resolve, it should be carried out. There should never be an exception. This point is supreme. To make a resolve and break it is demoralizing. Though not a single other soul on earth should know it, though God himself should not know, you would know it. You would have to confess your failure to yourself. To break a resolve is to undermine your self-respect. To break a resolve is to lose faith in yourself. It shakes your confidence that you can keep any other. The next time you become suddenly disgusted with any action or habit, and you clench your teeth and your left fist, and are just about to drive your left fist into the open palm of your right, and say to yourself, "The next time you're apt to stop short and think of your previous failure, and the bitter irony of it all may rush over you. You start at the very beginning with an unwholesome doubt of whether you are going to keep your resolve. And when self-respect and self-faith are gone, nothing else is worthwhile. But with every resolution kept, be it ever so small a resolution, your faith in yourself grows. The keeping of the next resolution becomes tremendously easier. Willpower comes into its inheritance. The moral of all this is that you should make fewer resolutions and keep more. The foolish resolution is the resolution made in a moment of passion and self-disgust. It is well that you should have such moments. It is of such moments that great achievements are born. But before you make a resolve that you seriously mean to execute, look at it coldly and completely. Think not alone of the benefits of keeping it, but of the disadvantages. If you have been lying in bed until 7:45, you have not been doing so unless there were some advantages in lying in bed until 7:45. Consider these advantages in the moment of your resolve. Do not pass them over in contempt. Weigh them at their full value. Measure the sacrifice of forsaking them. Balance it against the advantages of getting up promptly at 7. You may decide that getting up promptly at 7 is not worth its price. You may decide to compromise on 7:30, which would allow you half an hour's more sleep and a little more time to dress. Upon what you decide, it is not for me to comment. But your decision should be carried out. No more demoralizing course could be conceived than daily to resolve to arise at 7 and the next day always to wait until 7:45. Such a course comes only because, when you make your resolves, you do not fairly face the price. This rule is so important and has so wide a bearing that we cannot forsake it here. It applies to all our resolves. Let me illustrate with the example that has become the favorite with all writers on the will. I refer to drinking. The lawmakers insist on solving this particular will problem for us, but the constitutional amendment, so far as I am aware, puts no ban on its invaluable use as a literary example. Moreover, I cannot be arrested for pointing out that the actual temptations of drinking are not altogether a thing of the past. You have a drink, then another. Perhaps you have one or two more, though the count becomes rather confusing after a time. The liquor touches the spot, as you say, and for a time it produces a mental and emotional reaction that is highly delightful. But the next morning, your stomach is upset. Your food doesn't taste right. You have a headache. Your mental and physical movements are slow and listless. You get little work done. The color of the universe is drab. You are probably minus a good deal of money. You feel your self-respect slipping. You are losing the respect of your friends. And you resolve that morning, accompanied by the usual terrible knitting of brow and clenching of fist and of teeth, as if that helped. And your resolve that morning, accompanied with the usual terrible knitting of brow and clenching of fist and of teeth, as if that helped, is that these occasions of getting drenched must forever cease, end, terminate. And then what? That acute psychologist William James can tell you much better than I. Quote, "How many excuses does the drunkard find when each new temptation comes? It is a new brand of liquor which the interests of intellectual culture in such matters oblige him to test. Moreover, it is poured out, and it is a sin to waste it. Also, others are drinking, and it would be churlishness to refuse. Or it is but to enable him to sleep, or just to get through this job of work. Or it isn't drinking, it is because he feels so cold. Or it is Christmas Day. Or it is a means of stimulating him to make a more powerful resolution in favor of abstinence than any he has hereto made. Or it is just this once, and one doesn't count, etc., etc., ad libitum. It is, in fact, anything you like except being a drunkard. That is the conception that will not stay before the poor soul's attention. But if he once gets able to pick out that way of conceiving from all the other possible ways of conceiving the various opportunities which occur, if through thick and thin he holds to it, that this is being a drunkard and nothing else, he is not likely to remain one long. The effort by which he succeeds in keeping the right name unwaveringly present to his mind proves to be his saving moral act." End quote. And how is he to get able to pick out that way of conceiving and hold to it? There is only one way. Not in the moment of temptation, but in the moment of his resolve on the morning after. That is the time for him to summon all these excuses before him, to bring up every possible excuse, to think of every conceivable advantage of drinking, and then to ask himself whether they are powerful enough to offset the conception of being a drunkard, or whether the advantages of drinking outweigh its disadvantages. He must give an honest answer then. If he ignores these excuses on the ground that they are unworthy his noble resolve, he will find them dancing before his eyes in the next moment of temptation. And not having faced and answered them when he was in the mood to face and answer them, he is not likely to face them in that unhappy moment. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Success and the capital S. I come now to a question, always thought of consequence, and growing year by year in the prominence assigned to it, until with some men it has become the sole pursuit in life. The present age is obsessed with its importance in a singular degree. The American nation is obsessed with it beyond all other nations. Books are printed on it, magazines are devoted to it, men learnedly discuss its secret. I refer, as the reader has probably divined, to the question of success. You observe that I spell it with the majuscule. The meaning of the word thus spelled is at once broader and narrower than that of the ordinary word. Broader because it is taken to mean success in life. Narrower because it has come to imply a peculiar kind of success. It means, first of all, a material success. It is a synonym for getting on. Where you get to is thought of more consequence than what you are. Worshippers of success hold in contempt the man who is capable of enjoying life in obscurity and on $30 a week. They measure happiness externally, not internally, objectively, not subjectively. Some, a growing clan, gauge success directly in proportion to the number of dollars on which a man pays income tax. Others, less narrowly, would accord a place to fame, which is apparently conceived not so much as having the high estimation of one's fellows, as it is having one's name known among a large number of them. Now, implicitly or explicitly, this kind of extrinsic success is taken by the majority of persons as the measure of the intrinsic worth of a man. and that is why so many of us pursue it. Not for itself, not because we personally would give a BlackBerry for it, not because it is indispensable to our inmost happiness, but simply that we may excite the envy of others and seem happy in their eyes. We have a strange habit of estimating our own happiness by what other persons think it is, and their opinion is likely to be based on our material success, since they have little else to go by. We continually try to obtain the things that the people around us want or profess to want, rather than what we want ourselves, because we have never really tried to examine whether there is any difference between the two. In trying to find whether we are hot or cold, we attach more importance to a dubious thermometer than we do to our own feelings. Now, this kind of success, which I have gone so far out of my way to become sarcastic about, is not commonly attainable without the possession of one characteristic, a characteristic of far more importance in this respect than thrift, intelligence, industry, or common sense. That characteristic is a passionate desire to succeed, a desire so strong and overbearing that it amounts to a demand, and that, in the strictly economic sense to which I have before referred, means a willingness to pay the price. The price is, first of all, singleness of purpose and concentration of effort. Nearly all of us, at school, have thought that we should someday like to be President of the United States. But not all of us have made it a point to study the lives of past presidents to see how they did it. Not all of us have taken a law course with that special end. Not all of us have refused tempting commercial opportunities for certain poverty and struggle for a time, to gain an end in which the mathematical chances were ridiculously and overwhelmingly against us. Not all of us have kept desperately fanning the embers of dissatisfaction, fanning them into a constant white-hot flame. With most of us, the early fire dies, the embers fade, and grow cool. We reach as high a level as we ever seriously hoped to reach. We have spasms of dissatisfaction with our position in the world, but not sufficient dissatisfaction to make us work our way out of the rut to a higher position. We have moments of longing for the mountaintops, but not enough longing to make us willing to give up something for them. Strolling in the valleys is so much more pleasant than climbing. And singleness of purpose demands more sacrifices than mere industry. It involves giving up all pleasures that interfere with it. They may be quite innocent pleasures, their sole offense being that they occupy time. It involves making oneself narrow. One cannot be a success in any one line if one dissipates one's energies in a number of activities, unless, of course, one be a versatile genius whose energies overflow, like Benjamin Franklin, Leonardo da Vinci, or Goethe. And such instances are so rare that they may be ignored. Let there be no mistake. I do not mean to discourage efforts to become a success. I mean merely to indicate that the goal has a price. I want you merely to ask yourself whether you are willing to pay that price. To ask yourself candidly how far you want to go and how much you are willing to pay. For if you do not ask yourself now, before you make your success resolutions, you are likely to ask yourself later on. As you see obstacles and disappointments pile up, you are apt to begin wondering whether the game is worth the candle, whether the colors of the reality are as gorgeous as those of the painting. And if you decide to give up then, you will have broken your early resolution, with all the undermining of self-confidence and faith in your will which that involves. End of chapter 6.